History is not only written by the winners, it is built by the unseen. We celebrate the pyramids and the colosseums, but the true foundations of our world were laid by quiet revolutions almost no one talks about. By the end of this, you will see the entire sweep of human progress in a completely new way. What if the most important invention in an empire was not a weapon, but a knot? What if the secret to lasting 1,000 years was not in stone, but in a recipe for artificial stone? We are uncovering 20 overlooked ancient innovations that quietly shaped everything, from the hidden pipes beneath the first cities to the abstract idea that powers every computer. These are the unsung, everyday breakthroughs that anonymous minds crafted to solve real problems, and their brilliance still echoes in our homes, our cities, and our phones today. This is the story of progress when it whispers. So what forgotten tool from the past do you think is still silently holding your world together right now? The most celebrated achievements of history are merely the visible peak of a much larger structure. Beneath the surface lies a vast, unseen foundation of quiet ingenuity. This is where our story truly begins, not with the monuments, but with the reasons why the builders of those foundations are so often forgotten. Historical records have a powerful bias. They were written by and for the elite, chronicling the grand projects of kings and empires, projects that required state sponsorship and left behind inscriptions on stone. But what about the technology that did not require an army of laborers? The innovations born in a home, a workshop, or a field, perfected through generations of practice and passed down not through scrolls, but through hands and spoken word. These were the tools of everyday survival and comfort, often dismissed as mere women's work or simple craft, deemed unworthy of official chronicle. As one historian puts it, we meticulously record the wars of kings, but rarely document the potter's wheel that reliably fed the entire kingdom. This cultural and gendered lens through which history was filtered means we have lost the names and dates for countless revolutions. They faded not because they were unimportant, but because they were too ordinary, too essential, too woven into the fabric of daily life to be seen as remarkable by the scribes of the time. So before we uncover these specific quiet breakthroughs, pause for a moment. Look around you right now. What in your own daily routine is a crucial, yet completely invisible technology? The humble seal on your refrigerator door, the specific alloy in your phone's battery, the standardized thread on a light bulb. These are the direct descendants of ancient, overlooked genius. To find them, we must learn to look past the grand narratives and into the granular, practical details of how people actually lived. And when we do, an entirely different story of human progress emerges from the shadows. The most powerful technologies are the ones you stop seeing. They are not events but environments. This is the core idea of quiet progress, a type of innovation so fundamental and elegantly integrated that it fades into the background of civilization itself. It does not arrive with a bang, but with a seamless integration, becoming the silent, indispensable platform upon which all the flashier achievements stand. Think of it as the difference between a brilliant, popular mobile application and the unseen operating system that allows it to run at all. The app gets all the attention, the rave reviews, but without the foundational code of the operating system, it is nothing. Ancient quiet progress works the same way. The concept of zero, for instance, did not build a temple or win a war. It was an abstract, almost philosophical breakthrough. Yet by creating a placeholder, a concept of nothingness, it revolutionized mathematics, enabling everything from precise astronomy to the complex engineering we rely on today. Similarly, the establishment of standardized weights and measures did not make for epic poetry. It was a bureaucratic necessity, but by allowing a merchant in one city to trust the scale of a trader from another, it built the networks of commerce that connected continents, fostering not just trade but the exchange of ideas, cultures, and technologies. These are enabling innovations, not merely disruptive ones. They are the grammar of progress, not the story it tells. So ask yourself this: what is the zero in your own life? What is the standardized weight? It might be the electrical grid humming beneath your street, utterly invisible until a storm knocks it out. It could be the global system of time zones that allows you to coordinate a video call with someone halfway around the world without a second thought. When these systems work, they are silent. Their success is measured by their absence of drama. By shifting our perspective from the singular, celebrated event to the continuous, enabling system, we begin to see history not as a series of isolated triumphs, but as a cumulative layering of these quiet platforms. Each one expands what is possible for everyone who comes after, often without them ever knowing the name of the person who laid that first, crucial stone. Our story of quiet progress begins not with a tool you can hold, but with a void you can walk over. Beneath the orderly streets of Mohenjo-Daro, a city flourishing over 4,000 years ago, ran a hidden network of baked brick tunnels. This was not a grand monument to a king, but something far more revolutionary, a municipal circulatory system designed for one purpose: to carry wastewater away from where people lived. In an era when many ancient cultures were mastering architecture above ground, the Indus Valley civilization was engineering a solution to a problem most did not yet see as a problem: the silent threat of illness festering in stagnant water and waste. Their innovation was systematic and shockingly modern. Homes were connected to this network, with chutes from upper bathrooms directing used water into covered street drains. These drains, meticulously constructed from uniform bricks, were laid with a slight gradient so gravity would do the work of flow. And crucially, at regular intervals, they installed something remarkable: manholes. These were not accidental gaps but deliberate access points, meaning the people of Mohenjo-Daro did not just build a drainage system, they built a maintainable one. They understood that infrastructure must be serviced, a concept of civic planning that would not become standard in many parts of the world for thousands of years. This was a profound, quiet understanding of public health on a community scale. By separating clean water sources, like their famous public wells, from waste, they were combating the spread of waterborne ailments long before the germ theory of disease existed. They saw a connection between cleanliness and community well-being, and they engineered a solution that worked out of sight, underfoot. Consider the stark contrast for a moment. While the glorious aqueducts of Rome, built millennia later, famously brought clean water in, the management of wastewater in many subsequent cities remained a chaotic, hazardous, and very public affair. The genius of the Indus Valley was in creating a closed loop, a two-part system for both delivery and removal, that protected the health of a dense urban population. It was a civil engineering triumph that supported stability and growth not through conquest, but through collective care. This hidden grid of brick and water represents perhaps the purest form of quiet progress, a technology so effective at its job that its ultimate purpose, preventing widespread hardship, could almost be forgotten. It simply worked, making city life not just possible but sustainably so for centuries. And it poses a haunting question: when this civilization eventually faded, why did this brilliant, practical knowledge of urban sanitation seem to fade with it, leaving other societies to relearn the same vital lessons the hard way, over and over again? But the stability of a city requires more than clean streets. It demands a full stomach. While the engineers of Mohenjo-Daro were mastering water, another quiet revolution was taking root in the fields of Mesopotamia, one that would fundamentally reshape humanity's relationship with the land itself. For thousands of years, the primary method of sowing crops was brutally simple and wildly inefficient, known as broadcast seeding. A farmer would walk across a tilled field, casting handfuls of seed in a wide, sweeping arc. It was a method of faith and hope, scattering precious grain to the wind and soil, trusting that enough would find purchase to yield a harvest. The problems were immense. Seeds lay exposed on the surface, vulnerable to birds and weather. They landed in a chaotic blanket, making weeding a nightmare and choking the young plants. And it was profoundly wasteful, using far more seed than necessary for the number of plants that could actually thrive. Then, someone had a beautifully simple idea. Archaeological evidence suggests that as early as 1500 BCE, Mesopotamian farmers began using a tool we might call a seed plow. Picture a simple, funnel-tipped stick. A farmer would drag this implement along a furrow in the earth. Seeds placed in the funnel would trickle down the tip, depositing themselves in a neat line at a consistent depth beneath the soil. This was the ancient seed drill, a device of staggering consequence. Its immediate benefits were practical genius. By placing seeds in a row at an optimal depth, it conserved a precious resource, sometimes cutting seed use by half or more. It protected the seed from scavengers and the elements, and by creating orderly rows, it made the back-breaking work of weeding between crops not just possible, but manageable. This single tool transformed farming from an act of hopeful scattering into a calculated, efficient process of cultivation. But the true power of this quiet innovation was not just in the field, it was in the city. Reliable, increased yields meant one thing above all else: a stable agricultural surplus. For the first time on a large scale, not every member of a community had to be directly involved in food production. This surplus is the non-negotiable bedrock of civilization. It allowed for specialization. With full granaries, some people could stop farming and become potters, scribes, soldiers, priests, or engineers. It allowed populations to grow and concentrate in urban centers, supported by the food flowing from the now more productive countryside. It provided a buffer against lean years, granting societies resilience. The Mesopotamian seed drill did not build a ziggurat. It did not win a war. It likely never earned its inventor a single line of praise in any royal chronicle. Yet, by making the act of planting a seed more precise and less wasteful, it quietly amplified the very fuel of complex society. Every temple, every law code, every early scientific observation in Mesopotamia was, in a very real sense, built upon the surplus created by that funnel-tipped stick. It is a profound reminder that some of the most pivotal turns in human history are not marked by a battle or a coronation, but by a slight, deliberate improvement in the way we feed ourselves. What other humble beginnings, lost to the anonymity of daily toil, might hold the secret to our greatest leaps forward? Yet the surplus that fed cities created a new demand, a hunger for more than just grain. How do you turn raw materials into the goods a complex society needs, not one by one with human muscle, but in quantities that can supply markets and armies? The answer arrived not with a roar of industry, but with the soft, rhythmic slap of leather on wood. Deep within the workshops of China's Han Dynasty, over 2,000 years ago, a deceptively simple innovation was changing the very nature of production. It was the belt drive. Picture a large, vertical water wheel turned by a flowing river. Now, imagine a long, continuous loop of leather or woven fiber stretched around that wheel's axle, and then around the axle of another machine, perhaps a set of bellows for a forge or a trip hammer for pounding grain. As the water wheel turns, the belt turns with it, transferring that rotational energy over a distance to power a second device. This was a quiet revolution in mechanical thinking. Before this, machines that needed power had to have their own dedicated source, like a human, an animal, or a water wheel built directly into them. The belt drive introduced the concept of power transmission. It allowed one central source of energy, like a single large water wheel, to decentralize its force, driving multiple different machines simultaneously in a workshop. Think of it as the ancient world's first power grid, but for mechanics instead of electricity. The flexible belt had elegant advantages over rigid gears. It was simple to make and repair. It could bridge gaps and work around obstacles, adapting to the layout of a workspace. And because it transferred power smoothly, it reduced the jarring wear and tear on wooden machinery. This uncelebrated loop of material became the connective tissue of early mechanization. It quietly powered the proto-industrial heart of Han China, driving the bellows that superheated furnaces for cast iron production, operating the hammers that hold rice or pounded fibers for paper, and spinning the wheels that twisted silk thread. The belt drive did not produce a finished product you could hold. You would not find a beautiful belt in a museum display of Han artifacts. Its genius was in being the unseen enabler, the intermediary that made systematic, scaled production possible. It asks us to shift our gaze from the celebrated end product, the exquisite silk or the strong iron tool, to the humble systems that made creating them efficient. Where in our modern world do we see the direct descendant of this principle? Look inside any car engine at the serpentine belt, a single loop powering the alternator, water pump, and air conditioning compressor from one central crankshaft. The core idea, born in a Han workshop, is still turning, still connecting, still driving the machines of our world. It is a perfect example of how progress often lives in the linkages, in the parts so fundamental we forget to see them, yet without which the entire system would simply stop. A vast empire requires more than roads and granaries. It demands a memory. Across the sprawling, mountainous terrain of the Inca Empire, a civilization without a written script as we know it, administrators faced a monumental task. How do you track the population of millions, the contents of storehouses scattered across thousands of miles, the intricate obligations of labor and tribute, without a single piece of paper or a system of alphabetic writing? Their answer was not etched on stone or parchment, but tied in cotton and camelid fiber. It was the Khipu, a collection of knotted strings that served as a complex, three-dimensional data storage device. To call it merely a mnemonic aid is to profoundly underestimate its sophistication. A Khipu consisted of a main cord from which dozens, sometimes hundreds, of pendant cords hung. On these cords, trained record keepers known as Khipu tied knots of specific types in specific sequences, using strings dyed in a vast array of colors. The position of a knot, its style, whether a figure eight or a long knot, and the color of the cord itself all held distinct meaning. This was a tactile, visual language of numbers and categories, a binary code rendered in fiber, capable of recording intricate statistical data. It managed the empire's entire logistical backbone, census records, and treasury inventories with a silent, portable efficiency. The true quiet genius of the Khipu lies in how it challenges our most basic assumptions. We often equate advancement with phonetic writing, with alphabets and scrolls. The Khipu represents a parallel path to complexity, a wholly unique form of information technology born from its environment and needs. It was a system perfectly suited to an oral culture that valued communal recitation, where the Khipu could hold the strings and narrate the data they encoded. Recent research even suggests some Khipu may have recorded narrative histories, laws, or genealogies, moving beyond pure accounting into the realm of story. This forces a humbling question. How many other forms of knowledge, other complete systems of logic and memory, have vanished from human history simply because they did not conform to the textual mold that later empires would declare as the sole standard of civilization? The Khipu whispers that intelligence is not bound by the page, that a world of meaning can be held in the space between a knot and the human hand that ties it. It is a quiet monument to the diversity of human thought, a reminder that some of our most profound innovations are not about recording words, but about weaving understanding itself into the very fabric of our world. The Pantheon in Rome stands under an open sky, yet it has no roof. For nearly 2,000 years, rain has never touched its floor, sheltered by the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built. This architectural marvel points to a deeper, quieter secret, the very stuff it is made from. While Roman arches and aqueducts capture our imagination, the true silent hero of their endurance is not a shape but a substance. It is Roman concrete, and its magic ingredient was a volcanic ash called Pozzolana, harvested from the region of Pozzolana. This was not just a better mortar, it was a materials science breakthrough that operated invisibly within the walls of history's most enduring structures. The Romans discovered that mixing this specific ash with lime and rubble created a hydraulic concrete, a material that could not only cure underwater but actually grew stronger with time. The chemical reaction between the ash and seawater formed crystalline structures that locked together, resisting cracks and sealing themselves against the relentless wear of the elements. This stands in stark contrast to much of our modern Portland cement, which can begin to deteriorate in mere decades when exposed to salt water or stress. The innovation was in the recipe and its fearless application. It allowed Roman engineers to think in terms of liquid stone. They could pour this concrete into wooden molds to create the massive, curved foundations for harbors that thrived in the sea itself, like the one at Caesarea Maritima. They could build aqueduct channels that lasted centuries, and most famously, they could envision the impossible dome of the Pantheon, a single, vast shell of concrete that seems to defy its own weight. That dome is not solid all the way through. It is a masterpiece of graduated engineering, using lighter, porous volcanic rock at the top to reduce the load. The concrete made this ambition physically possible. This quiet material shaped the entire urban landscape of an empire, enabling a scale and permanence that defined Roman power and civic life. Its legacy is so profound that modern engineers and chemists still study samples, trying to unlock the full secrets of its longevity. It prompts a humbling reflection on the unsung materials that hold our own world together. We admire the soaring glass of a skyscraper, but what about the specific alloy in its steel skeleton, or the chemical recipe of the concrete in its foundation? These are our Pozzolana, the silent, enabling innovations we walk upon and live within, rarely giving them a thought until they fail. The Roman recipe was ultimately lost for centuries, a quiet technology that faded with the empire that mastered it, leaving later builders to wonder how those ancient walls simply refused to fall. While concrete could shape a harbor, it could not make the desert bloom. In the stark, sun-baked landscapes of ancient Nubia, along the banks of the Nile, survival hinged on a single, relentless challenge: lifting life-giving water from the river to the thirsty fields that lay above it. Grand canals were impossible here. The terrain and resources of local communities would not allow it. The solution was not a monument of state power, but a masterpiece of local, adaptive mechanics, the Saqiya, a water wheel powered not by river current, but by the patient, plodding circle of a donkey or an ox. Its genius was in its quiet, relentless efficiency. A vertical wheel, turned by the animal walking in a circle, was connected via a simple but precise right-angle gear to a horizontal wheel. This horizontal wheel, in turn, carried a continuous loop of pottery jars or buckets. As the animal walked, the gears translated its horizontal motion into the vertical motion needed to dip the jars into the Nile, lift them brimming with water, and pour them into a channel that fed an irrigation ditch high on the bank. Then the empty jar would loop back down for more, in a cycle that could continue for hours. This was a perpetual motion machine of survival, a decentralized pump that required no official decree, only local materials and understanding. The Saqiya did not just move water, it transformed geography. It turned previously uncultivable slopes and desert fringes into productive, green fields, expanding the narrow ribbon of fertility along the Nile. It was scalable. A single family could build and operate one, yet the principle could support an entire village. This was quiet progress in its most resilient form, a technology perfectly fitted to its environmental and social constraints. It empowered the individual farmer with a tool of immense leverage, granting food security and stability without the need for a vast, controlling bureaucracy. The Saqiya whispers a crucial lesson about innovation, that the most vital technologies are often those that solve a hyper-specific problem with elegant simplicity, using the resources at hand. How many other location-specific marvels, born from the intimate knowledge of a particular river, forest, or mountain, have vanished from the historical record because they were not grandiose enough to be celebrated beyond their own valley? They were the unsung engines of regional survival, turning environmental limits into sustainable livelihoods with nothing more than wood, pottery, and gear teeth carved by hand. A shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera held a secret for 2,000 years. When sponge divers finally brought up a corroded lump of bronze and wood in 1901, they had no idea they were holding a ghost, the shattered echo of a technological peak that history had completely forgotten. This is the Antikythera mechanism, often called the world's first analog computer. But while its intricate gear trains predicting eclipses and tracking the Olympic Games are rightly celebrated, there is one tiny, brilliant component inside that represents a quiet revolution all its own. It is the differential gear. This is not a single gear, but an elegant arrangement of several interlocking gears designed to do one astonishing thing: to calculate a difference. In this case, the mechanism used it to model the irregular, elliptical orbit of the Moon around Earth. As the main drive turned, representing a simple circular motion, the differential gear compensated mathematically, making the Moon's pointer speed up and slow down in its display to match the subtle reality of the cosmos. This was not just telling time, it was mechanically embodying complex astronomical mathematics in bronze. Think of the conceptual leap required. Someone, or some group, over 2,000 years ago, understood a celestial irregularity so deeply that they could translate it into a physical system of precisely cut teeth and axles. They built a machine that could think in terms of variables and compensation. The quiet genius here is not merely the gear's existence, but what it implies. This level of precision engineering and abstract modeling did not spring from a vacuum. It suggests a lost lineage of mechanical knowledge, a workshop tradition of crafting models of the heavens that was sophisticated enough to invent the differential gear a full millennium and a half before it would famously reappear in European clockwork and eventually in the axle of every automobile. The Antikythera mechanism forces a haunting question upon us. We marvel at it as a singular, miraculous survivor, but what if it was not a miracle but a relic? What if it was simply one example, perhaps a luxury model, of a type of device that was more widely understood in its time? The ship that carried it was a Roman cargo vessel, possibly looting Greek treasures. Was this mechanism a rare scholarly toy, or was it evidence of a more widespread technical culture whose scrolls and workshops have turned to dust? Its silent gears point to a profound truth about the fragility of knowledge. An entire peak of understanding can be submerged by the tides of conflict, social collapse, or simply the decay of materials, leaving behind only a single, cryptic clue in a shipwreck. It asks us to look at other isolated marvels from the ancient world with new eyes, wondering what vast, silent continents of innovation lie forever lost beneath the sea of time, known only by a single, surviving whisper in bronze. But the genius of the Saqiya was limited by the river's edge. To truly conquer the desert, you must become a surgeon of the landscape, operating on the earth itself to find a hidden pulse. Across the vast, arid plateaus of ancient Persia, the solution was not to lift water up but to coax it down on a journey of silent, patient gravity. This was the Qanat, a subterranean aqueduct of breathtaking ambition and communal effort. Its design was deceptively simple in concept, yet monumental in execution. It began high in the foothills where snowmelt seeped into porous rock, creating a hidden aquifer. Skilled surveyors, using nothing more than sighting rods and an intuitive grasp of hydrology, would locate this water source. Then the real work began. A team of diggers would start a vertical mother well, sinking it deep until they struck the life-giving water table. From the base of this well, they then began carving the heart of the Qanat, a gently sloping tunnel, just large enough for a person to crawl through, heading straight for the distant settlement or farmland that needed water. Along the tunnel's entire length, at intervals of about 20 to 30 meters, they would dig more vertical shafts down to meet it. These shafts served a dual purpose. They provided air for the diggers, removed the excavated earth, and later became vital access points for maintenance. The precision required was immense. The slope of the tunnel, perhaps only a meter of drop per kilometer of length, had to be perfectly calculated. Too steep, and the water would flow too fast, eroding the tunnel walls. Too shallow, and the water would stagnate. This was quiet, collective geoengineering, a project that could take years or even generations to complete, binding a community together in a shared, long-term covenant with the future. The Qanat's brilliance was in its elegant sustainability. By running the water underground, it was completely protected from the blistering desert sun, eliminating the catastrophic loss to evaporation that would cripple an open canal. It delivered a cool, clean, and remarkably consistent flow, a reliable heartbeat in an otherwise unforgiving environment. It did not just deliver water, it created oases, microclimates of fertility where cities like Persepolis could rise and lush gardens could bloom in the dust. This network of hidden veins transformed entire regions, enabling agriculture, settlement, and culture to flourish for thousands of years in places otherwise written off by nature. The Qanat challenges our very definition of a monument. We are drawn to what stands against the sky, but the Persians built their greatest testament to ingenuity beneath their feet, in the dark, cool silence of the earth. It asks us what other foundational systems, invisible and underground, are the true pillars of the places we call home. The pipes beneath your street, the fiber optic cables carrying these words, they are our modern Qanats, the silent, vital networks we trust without ever seeing the generations of labor that made them possible. The desert's hidden water was a miracle of gravity, but to shape a new world, humanity needed to master a far more violent force, fire. In the workshops of southern India and Sri Lanka, over 2,000 years ago, artisans were conducting a quiet kind of alchemy. They were not turning lead into gold, but something far more valuable in the long arc of civilization. They were turning iron into a legendary material known as Wootz steel. This was not a process of brute force, but of exquisite, secretive control. The innovation was a sealed clay pot, a crucible. Into it, craftsmen would place pieces of wrought iron along with specific leaves and wood chips, rich in carbon. They would seal the lid shut with clay and place the pot into a charcoal furnace, heating it for hours, sometimes days. Inside that sealed ceramic womb, a silent, chemical ballet took place. The organic material would not burn away, but instead, in the oxygen-starved environment, it would release carbon that slowly, atom by atom, infused into the iron. The result was a liquid steel ingot with an ultra-high carbon content, a material of stunning potential. But the magic was not yet complete. The true artistry, the quiet genius passed down through generations of guilds, was in the cooling. The ingot was not quenched rapidly, but allowed to cool slowly, often over many days. This patient thermal treatment allowed microscopic crystals of an iron carbide called cementite to form in swirling patterns within the steel. When a master smith finally forged a blade from this ingot, etching it with a mild acid, those hidden patterns would rise to the surface like a ghostly watermark, the famous rippling waves of what would later be called Damascus steel. This was not merely decoration, it was the visual signature of a metal that was both incredibly hard and surprisingly flexible, a combination ancient warriors and kings prized above almost all else. But the greater significance of Wootz steel lies not in the beauty of the blades, but in the profound knowledge it represents. These artisans, working centuries before formal chemistry existed, had mastered variables modern metallurgists would call carbon alloying, temperature gradients, and solid-state diffusion. They understood, through generations of meticulous trial and error, that the properties of a material were not fixed, but could be engineered through precise recipes and processes. Their workshop was a laboratory, their furnace an instrument, and their notebooks were the tacit knowledge whispered from master to apprentice. This quiet innovation forces us to expand our definition of scientific discovery. Long before the Royal Society or the university laboratory, fundamental principles of materials science were being forged in the heat of the artisan's crucible. It asks a humbling question: how many other foundational truths about our world were first understood not by scholars in libraries, but by makers with soot-stained hands, their breakthroughs lost because they were recorded not in ink, but in the fleeting memory of a guild? The legacy of Wootz steel is a testament to the fact that some of humanity's deepest insights are born not from grand theory, but from the intimate, persistent dialogue between a curious mind and a stubborn material. Yet the strength of a blade or the flow of water means little without trust. In the bustling markets of ancient Mesopotamia, amidst the trade of grain, livestock, and precious metals, a different kind of foundation was being laid, one not of stone or steel, but of ideas. We remember Hammurabi's towering stone stele, etched with its stark laws of retribution, but carved beside those famous penalties was a quieter, far more revolutionary principle, the concept of legal precedent. This was the understanding that past judicial decisions should inform and guide future rulings, creating a consistent body of judgment over time. It transformed justice from a momentary decree, subject to a ruler's whim or a judge's mood, into a predictable process. A merchant could enter a dispute knowing that similar cases had been resolved in a particular way, that there was a standard to appeal to beyond the authority of the person sitting in judgment that day. This established a system of common law, a growing, living tapestry of jurisprudence that provided societies with two priceless commodities: stability and fairness. The innovation was intellectual, a soft technology for social organization. It recognized that for a complex society to function, for commerce to flourish and property rights to be secure, people needed to believe in a system, not just fear a power. It moved the center of gravity from the capricious will of a single individual toward the reasoned weight of accumulated community wisdom. Think of it as the operating system for civilization itself, the shared code that allows millions of strangers to interact with a basic expectation of how conflicts will be handled. This invisible framework is what enabled the first large-scale contracts, the delegation of authority, and the resolution of disputes without constant recourse to violence. Its legacy is so deeply embedded in our world that we scarcely notice it. Every time you click agree to a terms of service, purchase a home with a deed, or even expect a consistent ruling in a court of law, you are engaging with the direct descendant of that Mesopotamian insight. The quiet genius of precedent is that it builds a bridge between the past and the future, using experience as a guide for order. It asks a profound question about the nature of progress. Can a society truly advance if its rules are reinvented with every new sunrise? Or does lasting peace require the subtle, steady accumulation of agreed-upon principles, woven silently into the fabric of daily life? The desire for beauty is a profound human impulse, but the materials of beauty are often held by the earth in scarce and precious handfuls. In ancient Egypt, the color blue was a cosmic signature, the hue of the life-giving Nile, the vast sky, and the sacred lapis lazuli stone imported from distant, dangerous mountains. It symbolized creation, divinity, and protection. Yet, while gold could be mined and shaped by the pharaohs, this celestial blue was a rarity, a luxury locked away by geography and cost. So, in the workshops along the Nile, anonymous artisans performed a kind of quiet magic. They learned to conjure the sky from the desert itself, inventing a material that was not mined but made. This was Egyptian faience, and its creation was a secret chemical dance hidden within a simple-looking paste. The recipe was deceptively humble, a mixture of crushed quartz sand, a small amount of clay, and an alkali binder, often natron salts harvested from dry lake beds. The real innovation, however, happened in the fire. This paste was not coated with a glaze like later pottery. Instead, the artisans engineered the material from the inside out. They carefully balanced the mix so that during firing, the water-soluble salts within the body would migrate through the porous quartz matrix, rising to the surface as the heat intensified. There, on the very skin of the object, these salts would fuse with the silica in the sand, melting into a thin, hard, brilliantly colored glassy layer. It was a self-glazing ceramic, a single substance that created its own perfect, shiny shell. The most common and cherished color was that sacred, vibrant blue, achieved by adding a tiny amount of copper oxide to the mix. The result was a synthetic gemstone shimmering with the color of the gods, yet made from the most common ingredients under the sun. This was not just craft, it was early materials science. These craftsmen were manipulating chemical reactions and phase changes with an intuitive mastery that modern chemists can only admire. They understood that the properties of a material could be designed, that by controlling the recipe and the firing atmosphere, they could dictate how it transformed. Faience became the democratized beauty of Egypt, while solid gold and carved lapis were for royalty and the highest elites. Faience amulets in the shape of protective gods, scarab beetles, and the eye of Horus could be worn by nearly anyone. It lined the walls of tombs in dazzling blue tiles, creating an eternal, heavenly canopy for the departed. It was fashioned into beads, rings, and inlays, bringing a touch of the divine into daily life. This quiet technology represents a shift in human capability, from simply finding valuable things in the world to inventing new valuable things through knowledge. The Faience workshop was a laboratory where aesthetics and chemistry met, where the desire for symbolic meaning drove technological experimentation. It whispers that some of our most profound advancements begin not with utility, but with yearning, with the human need to create meaning and beauty from the very dust of the earth. The shimmering blue of Faience was a triumph of chemistry over scarcity, yet the most epic journeys in human history were guided by a map that left no physical trace at all. It was a chart drawn not on parchment, but in the mind, using the entire Pacific Ocean as its canvas. For the Polynesian voyagers, the innovation was not a device you could hold, but a profound, living system of knowledge called the star compass and wave piloting. Imagine setting out across thousands of miles of open ocean in a double-hulled canoe, with no magnetic compass, no written charts, and no sextant to measure the sun. Your survival depends on your ability to read a language written in the movement of water and the stillness of light. The star compass was not a physical object, but a mental construct. A master navigator or wayfinder would memorize the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars on the horizon, dividing the circle of the sea into a celestial grid. Each star was a bearing, a fixed point in the turning sky, but the stars are only visible at night. The true genius of the system was its integration of countless other clues. During the day, the wayfinder read the ocean itself, They learned to feel the deep, rolling swells generated by distant weather systems, swells that maintained their direction for thousands of miles. By sensing the subtle interplay of multiple swell patterns against the hull, they could maintain a course even when the sky was overcast. They watched the flight paths of specific seabirds, whose range from land indicated direction and proximity. They interpreted the color and shape of clouds, which could hint at an unseen island's presence over the horizon, and they tasted the salinity of the water, noting changes in current. This was a monumental achievement in applied ecology and spatial reasoning. It was a dynamic, real-time processing of environmental data, a continuous dialogue between the navigator and the natural world. The quiet innovation was the cognitive framework itself, a rigorous empirical science passed down through generations of apprenticeship. It enabled the deliberate, two-way settlement of the Pacific, the last great habitable realm on Earth to be populated by humans. These were not accidental voyages of drift, but intentional journeys of colonization, carrying families, plants, and animals across a watery void. This system forces a radical redefinition of technology. We often equate advancement with the tangible, the gear, the engine, the printed circuit. The Polynesian wayfinders demonstrate that the supreme technology can be the trained human mind, enriched by centuries of accumulated observation. Their canoe was a vessel, but their true vehicle was knowledge, a living library of the sea that could not be burned or lost at sea, only forgotten. It poses a haunting question for our own instrument-reliant age. In outsourcing our sense of direction to satellites and screens, what vast, subtle languages of the world have we quietly unlearned? What silent maps written in the patterns of wind or the growth of moss once guided our ancestors and now linger just beyond the edge of our perception? Flames that burned on water were the nightmare of any fleet approaching Constantinople. The terror of Greek fire is etched into history, a liquid hell that could not be extinguished, clinging to ships and men alike. Yet the true, quiet revolution was not in the secret chemical recipe, but in the cold, precise bronze machinery that hurled it across the waves. The Byzantine Empire's genius was in engineering not just a weapon, but a complete weapon system, a pressurized siphon pump that transformed a volatile liquid into a controlled, projected force. Imagine the challenge to pump a thick, flammable mixture from the hold of a ship through a heated chamber to keep it liquid and primed, and then eject it in a continuous, arching stream toward an enemy vessel, all without setting your own wooden world on fire. This required a mastery of valves, pistons, and pressurized tanks, a sophisticated application of fluid dynamics centuries before the principles would be formally understood. The pump itself was the unsung hero, a piece of military hardware that turned a terrifying substance into a tactical reality. Its operation was a carefully choreographed ballet of mechanics and chemistry, allowing a crew to aim and fire this naval flamethrower with devastating effect. For over 7 centuries, this combination of secret formula and secret mechanism was the ultimate deterrent, a silent guardian technology whose very mystery was its strength. The siphon pump shifts our focus from the spectacular what to the ingenious how. It reminds us that a breakthrough substance often means nothing without an equally brilliant delivery system. The quiet progress here was in systems integration, in seeing the weapon not as a single element, but as an interconnected chain of chemistry, metallurgy, and mechanical engineering. It is a principle that echoes far beyond ancient warfare. Today, a life-saving vaccine is only as powerful as the syringe that delivers it, and the data in a smartphone is useless without the intricate circuitry that processes and displays it. The Byzantine engineers understood that the bottle is as important as the genie inside, a lesson in how the most fearsome power is ultimately shaped and controlled by the silent, practical hand of the machine. Zinc is a metal that refuses to be tamed by fire. In its molten state, it behaves like an escaping ghost, boiling away into a vapor that instantly bursts into flame upon meeting the air, leaving behind only a wisp of useless white ash. For centuries, this volatile nature made pure zinc one of the great metallurgical phantoms of the ancient world. Civilizations from Rome to India knew of its ores and used them in healing salves, but isolating the pure, metallic element seemed an impossible task. Then, in the smoky, secretive workshops of ancient India and later, perfected in Ming Dynasty China by the 16th century, a quiet solution emerged. It was not a louder furnace or a stronger bellows, but a clever act of containment. The innovation was a specialized sealed crucible, a ceramic vessel engineered with a downward-sloping neck that acted as a condenser. Inside, zinc ore and charcoal were heated intensely. As the zinc vaporized instead of being lost to the air, it was forced to travel up and then down that sloped neck. The temperature gradient there was just right, causing the vapor to cool, condense, and drip down as liquid metal into a waiting collection chamber, all in an oxygen-free environment. This was distillation applied to solid metal, a sophisticated grasp of chemistry and thermodynamics that turned an elusive vapor into a tangible, malleable resource. The impact of this quiet workshop process was immense. Pure zinc was the key ingredient for making brass, the golden alloy of copper and zinc that was more workable, more corrosion-resistant, and more beautiful than bronze. With a reliable supply of zinc, brass production could be scaled. It flowed into every corner of material life, from the elegant fittings on scholars' desks and the mirrors in wealthy homes, to the durable components of nautical compasses and the vast quantities of coinage that greased the wheels of a booming economy. The humble brass coin in a merchant's hand, the brass Buddha on a family altar, these were the end products of a hidden chemical ballet performed in sealed clay pots. This process demonstrates a profound truth about quiet progress, that the ability to isolate and manipulate a single, stubborn element can send ripples through an entire civilization. It reshapes art by providing a new medium, it transforms technology by enabling new tools, and it solidifies economies by creating a reliable standard for trade. The zinc distillers, their names lost to the soot of their furnaces, were not just metal workers, they were early chemical engineers whose precise control over matter helped build a world of gleaming, practical beauty. It makes you wonder what other invisible, elemental struggles are happening right now in laboratories, struggles over a material we cannot yet reliably hold, that will one day become as commonplace and foundational as the brass in a pocketful of change. But measuring time by the stars or the sun was a rhythm dictated by the heavens, not by the needs of a courtroom or the night watch. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, a different kind of time was being born, one measured not by light but by the steady, patient drip of water. The clepsydra, or water clock, was a vessel of profound conceptual change. At its simplest, it was a ceramic pot with a small, carefully calibrated hole near the base. Fill it with water, and the level would fall at a roughly constant rate, with markings on the interior wall indicating the passage of hours. Others worked in reverse, with a steady trickle filling a marked container. This was time made tangible, a resource you could literally watch draining away or accumulating. Its earliest uses were brilliantly practical. In the dim interiors of temples or on starless nights, when sundials were useless, the clepsydra's drip provided a reliable pulse. In Babylonian courts, it was used to ensure equal speaking time for both sides in a dispute, introducing a new kind of fairness measured in minutes and drops. But the quiet revolution here was not in the pottery, it was in the mental model. For the first time, humanity had created a tool that quantified time as a continuous, independent stream, separate from the grand cycles of sunrise and sunset. It was no longer just dawn, midday, or dusk. It was the third hour of the watch, the precise length of a guard's shift, the allocated span for a merchant's presentation. This abstract, regimented time became a new framework for organizing complex society. It allowed for the synchronization of labor in large workshops, the precise scheduling of religious rituals, and the meticulous record-keeping of astronomical observations. The water clock introduced the concept of the hour as a manageable unit, a building block for bureaucracy, science, and commerce. It began the silent process of segmenting the fluid day into measured containers, shifting human consciousness from living within natural time to managing a personal allotment of it. This was the philosophical seed of the modern world's most pervasive force, the schedule. The gentle drip in that clay vessel was the first tick of a clock that would eventually govern factories, train stations, and digital calendars. It asks a subtle but powerful question: when did we stop following time and start being followed by it? That invisible grid of hours and minutes that structures your day, your work, your appointments. Its origin is not in a gear or a quartz crystal, but in the ancient, echoing plink of water into a bowl, a sound that taught us to count our most fleeting resource. High in the Andes, where the air is thin and the ground can freeze solid under a blazing sun, survival hinged on a single, starchy tuber, the potato. But a fresh potato rots, and a year of hard labor could be wiped out by a single season of scarcity. The solution devised by Andean peoples was not a granary or a spice, but a patient collaboration with the sky itself, a process that turned the harshness of the mountains into a preservative. They created Chuño, a freeze-dried potato that could last for a decade or more. The method was a masterpiece of applied environmental science. Potatoes were spread out on the open ground during the frigid night, where they froze completely as temperatures plummeted. With the dawn came the intense alpine sun. As the potatoes thawed, people would gently trample them, squeezing out the water released by the broken cell walls. Then the cycle repeated, night after day after night, freezing, thawing, pressing. This repeated process of sublimation, where ice turns directly into vapor without becoming liquid, slowly sucked every drop of moisture from the tuber. What remained was a light, rock-hard nugget, a potato reduced to its essence. This was not merely drying, it was a form of natural cryogenics, a biotechnology that used the rhythm of the climate as its engine. The quiet genius of Chuño was in its total sustainability. It required no artificial energy, no complex machinery, only an intimate understanding of the local thermal cycles. It transformed the potato from a perishable crop into a strategic reserve, a compact, lightweight, and incredibly durable staple. This innovation was the logistical backbone of Andean civilization. It allowed communities to withstand years of poor harvests, creating a buffer against famine. It enabled the storage and transport of vast food supplies, which in turn supported the large labor forces that built the vast road networks and terraced cities of the Inca Empire and fed its armies on the march. Chuño represents a pinnacle of quiet progress, where human ingenuity does not fight nature, but listens to it and learns its rhythms. It asks us to reconsider what we label as advanced technology. Long before industrial freeze dryers used vacuum chambers and condensers to preserve astronaut food, Andean families were achieving the same result on stone patios, using the mountain air as their laboratory. It is a profound testament to indigenous knowledge systems that solved existential problems with elegant, renewable solutions, turning a climatic challenge into a lasting legacy of resilience. In a world seeking sustainable answers, perhaps the quietest wisdom is already written in the cycles of frost and sun, waiting to be remembered. The roads of Rome are remembered in stone, but their true power flowed along a schedule. While the paved highways were the empire's visible skeleton, a hidden nervous system pulsed upon them, the Cursus Publicus. This was not a public mail service for citizens, but a state-operated relay network, a logistical engine designed for one purpose: to move imperial information and personnel at a speed the ancient world had never seen. At its heart was a simple, relentless principle, the relay. A messenger bearing a dispatch would ride his horse to the limit of its endurance, but instead of resting the animal, he would arrive at a meticulously placed way station. There, a fresh horse was already saddled and waiting. The messenger would transfer his orders to a new rider, or sometimes continue himself on the fresh mount, and the process would repeat station after station, day and night. This elimination of downtime was the breakthrough. Couriers could cover staggering distances, up to 170 Roman miles in a single day, a pace that would not be consistently matched in Europe until the 19th century. The quiet genius, however, was not in the speed of a single horse, but in the vast, silent machinery that made that speed sustainable. The empire had to establish and maintain thousands of these stations across continents, each stocked with dedicated grooms, veterinarians, wheelwrights, and fresh animals. It required a standardized bureaucracy to manage fodder, repairs, and the official warrants that granted access to the system. This was an ancient analog to the internet, a dedicated protocol for data transmission running on the physical hardware of the roads. Its impact was transformative. A governor's report from Britain could reach the emperor in Rome in weeks, not months. Laws and edicts could be disseminated with unprecedented uniformity, tightening the administrative grip of the central state. Military intelligence could flow rapidly to decision-makers, and tax revenues could be tracked and moved with greater security. The Cursus Publicus did not just carry messages, it compressed the empire's sense of space and time, making effective governance across vast distances a practical reality. It highlights a profound truth that the flashy infrastructure, the celebrated roads and aqueducts, are merely tools. Their revolutionary potential is only unlocked by the soft technology of organization, the schedules, the supply chains, the protocols, the operational software that animates the hardware. The Roman relay asks us to look past the monument to the maintenance manual, to see that the greatest empires were ultimately sustained not by stone, but by system, by the quiet, relentless rhythm of the changing of the horses. The power of a number is not in its shape but in its seat. Across the ancient world, from Rome to Babylon, mathematics was a labyrinth of cumbersome symbols. To write 123, a Roman scribe etched CXXIII, a series of additive marks where the value of a symbol never changed. A Babylonian might use a wedge for 1 and a different mark for 60, but their system was a complex puzzle without a consistent rule for empty columns. Calculating with these notations was a specialized craft, slow and prone to error, limiting the pace of commerce, engineering, and astronomy. Then, in the intellectual centers of India, a quiet cognitive revolution took form, not in a workshop, but in the minds of mathematicians. By the 5th century, they had fully synthesized a system so elegant it seems obvious to us now, the decimal place value system, crowned by the concept of zero as a placeholder. The innovation was the framework itself, a cohesive notational language where the exact same digit, say the symbol for 5, could mean 5 or 50 or 500, purely based on its position in a row. A 1 in the third column was not just 1 plus 1 plus 1, it was 100. 0 was the silent guardian of this order, a circular symbol meaning emptiness, Chuño, that held the other digits in their proper places, distinguishing 101 from 1001. This was a new grammar for quantity. Suddenly, the most complex arithmetic, from long multiplication to extracting square roots, could be performed efficiently on a dustboard or a palm leaf, following clear, repeatable algorithms. It turned calculation from an arcane art into a more accessible skill. The system's true quiet power was its scalability and abstraction. It could handle the astronomy of Brahmagupta, calculating planetary motions with unprecedented precision, and centuries later, provide the logical foundation for the binary code that drives every digital device. This was not a physical tool you could hold, but a cognitive one you could think with, a set of symbols that expanded the very capacity of the human mind to model the world. It asks a subtle question: where does technology truly reside? We fixate on engines and devices, but sometimes the most transformative machine is an idea, a set of agreed-upon rules written down that allows us to build invisible structures of thought. The decimal system traveled silently along trade routes, adopted by Persian and Arab scholars who called it Hindu numerals before eventually passing into Europe. It faced resistance, seen by some as a mysterious, even diabolical innovation compared to the trusted Roman numerals, but its efficiency was undeniable. That quiet framework from an Indian mathematician's scroll is the same one you use to check a receipt, to program a computer, or to measure the distance to a star. It is the unseen lattice upon which the modern world calculates its reality, a testament to the fact that the most profound progress can begin with a simple decision about where to put a circle. Stone can be strong, but it is also brittle. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, where the very ground could shudder without warning, the Minoan builders faced a paradox. Their grand palaces at Knossos and Phaistos were symbols of power and culture, yet they stood in a landscape that could, in a moment, reduce rigid stone to rubble. Their quiet innovation was not in defying the Earth's movement, but in learning to dance with it. They pioneered seismic-resistant architecture over 3,500 years ago, embedding resilience into the very bones of their buildings. The genius was in the details, invisible to the eye but vital to survival. Within their thick stone walls, they integrated horizontal and vertical wooden beams, creating a flexible wooden skeleton inside the masonry shell. This framework acted like a shock absorber, allowing the wall to flex and sway during a tremor instead of cracking apart. They set their iconic tapered columns not directly on stone foundations, but on rounded stone discs, creating a kind of primitive ball joint that allowed the column to shift slightly without toppling. Even their walls were cleverly designed, often filled with a core of loose rubble and earth that could compress and settle, dissipating energy. This was not accidental construction, but a proactive, deeply observed adaptation to a permanent environmental hazard. It was structural engineering born from painful experience and meticulous observation, a quiet dialogue between human ambition and planetary reality. The Minoans were building for the unseen, for the force they knew would come again. This architectural foresight allowed their vibrant, artistic civilization to flourish for centuries in a volatile home, their palaces enduring repeated shocks that would have leveled less thoughtful structures. It redirects our gaze from what these buildings were to how they were meant to endure. This is progress measured not in height or ornament, but in sustained stability. It is a testament to building not just for grandeur or the present moment, but for the unpredictable future, a principle of resilient design that echoes urgently in our own world of changing climates and stresses. The Minoan builder, whose name we do not know, understood something profound, that true strength lies not in rigid resistance, but in intelligent, graceful flexibility. The final stone in our mosaic of quiet progress glows with a heat that could reshape metal and history itself. Far from the forges of India or the workshops of China, beneath the skies of ancient West Africa, another pinnacle of pyrotechnology was reached independently. In regions like that of the Nok culture, iron smelters mastered the secrets of the earth using towering, forced draft furnaces, sophisticated structures that hummed with controlled fury. Their design was a quiet symphony of air and fire. Multiple clay pipes called tires were inserted into the furnace walls, connected to bellows operated by teams of workers. This was not a single breath of air, but a continuous, powerful blast channeling oxygen deep into the heart of the charcoal and iron ore. The result was an inferno so intense it could achieve temperatures high enough to not just melt iron, but to fundamentally alter its chemistry, producing pure, high-carbon steel blooms directly from the local ore. This was an elegant, localized solution, a direct response to the specific materials and needs of the region. The furnace itself was the innovation, a silent clay cathedral dedicated to transformation. Its product fueled everything from the finely wrought tools that cleared land and harvested crops, to the exquisite sculptures that gave the Nok their name, those haunting terracotta figures with their intricate details and profound expressions. This technological leap supported complex societies, enabling art, agriculture, and trade to flourish on their own terms. Its existence whispers a crucial correction to the grand narrative. For too long, the story of human advancement has been drawn as a map with only a few bright capitals, with innovation flowing along a single Eurasian axis. The West African furnace stands as a quiet, monumental rebuttal. It declares that the human drive to master materials, to push the limits of heat and chemistry, was a global conversation, not a monologue. Brilliant minds on every continent were asking the same fundamental questions of their environment and arriving at equally brilliant parallel answers. This final innovation asks us to redraw our mental atlas of progress, to recognize that centers of technical excellence burned brightly everywhere, their light often obscured by distance or the dust of forgotten trade routes. It is a humbling and expansive note to end on, a reminder that the quietest revolutions are often the most universal, speaking a language of fire, ingenuity, and resilience understood by human hands everywhere. These quiet innovations never existed in a vacuum. They traveled, they spoke to one another across mountains and seas, carried by merchants, scholars, and migrants on the very trade routes their own reliability helped to create. The Indian decimal place value system did not stay in its subcontinent. It was adopted and adapted by Persian and Arab mathematicians who saw its elegant logic, and it sailed westward on their ships of commerce and conquest. The secret of zinc distillation moved along the Silk Road, its principles whispering from workshop to workshop. The concept of the Qanat, born in Persia, found echoes in the underground channels of Oman and the Canary Islands, each culture adapting the core idea of a gravity-fed tunnel to its own unique geology. This was a global conversation conducted in the language of practical need, a slow, patient cross-pollination of genius that built the foundations of our interconnected world. Look at any single thread and you see a local solution. Pull back to see the entire tapestry and you witness a collective human project. The themes become clear. First, profound adaptation to environment. The Polynesian star compass is meaningless in a forest, just as the Qanat is useless in a swamp. Each innovation was a deep, intimate response to a specific place, a collaboration with local materials and local constraints. Second, the underestimated power of abstract thought. The concept of zero, the framework of legal precedent, the mental model of a star compass, these were soft technologies, architectures of the mind that enabled everything else. And third, the vital importance of decentralized, practical knowledge. This progress rarely sprang from a royal decree. It bubbled up from the fields, from the artisan's workshop, from the sailor's long experience, passed hand to hand and generation to generation. This synthesis reveals a new story of human advancement. It is not a simple timeline of eureka moments and heroic inventors. It is something far more profound and far more human. It is the story of a slow, collective accretion. Imagine each quiet innovation as a single brick. Alone, it is just a brick, but lay one upon another across centuries and continents, and you do not get a pile, you get a platform. The seed drill created the agricultural surplus that fed the city. The city's need for order gave rise to legal precedent and standardized weights. Those standards enabled long-distance trade, which carried the belt drive and the recipe for steel. Each solution built a slightly more stable, capable, and connected world, raising the floor of possibility for everyone who came after. Our modern world of instant communication and global supply chains does not rest on the shoulders of a few giants. It stands upon this vast, layered platform of quiet, anonymous brilliance. So what does this mean for how we see history, and more importantly, for how we see our own capacity to build a better future? The true legacy of these whispers from the past is not a list of forgotten gadgets, but a fundamental shift in how we see our own story. Our journey through these 20 overlooked innovations reveals a profound truth. History's backbone is made not only of kings and battles, but of potters, farmers, smiths, and navigators solving everyday problems with extraordinary creativity. For every pharaoh's tomb, there were 1,000 hands perfecting the self-glazing faience that lined it. For every imperial decree carved in stone, there was a Mesopotamian merchant relying on a standardized weight to make a fair trade. The grand narratives we learn are the tip of a colossal iceberg, while below the surface lies the immense, supporting mass of quiet, practical genius. From the Qanat's hidden waterways bringing life to deserts, to the Khipu's knotted logic holding an empire's memory, these were not hobbies or sidelines. They were the essential work of building foundations, of creating health, enabling commerce, preserving knowledge, and engineering resilience. They remind us that progress is often a whisper, not a shout, embedded in the materials we use and the systems we take for granted every single day. The concrete in your sidewalk, the concept of an hour in your schedule, the very numbers on your screen all carry the faint, enduring echo of someone's brilliant solution to a problem we have long since stopped seeing. As we face our own era's complex challenges, from environmental shifts to the stewardship of knowledge, this hidden history offers a powerful inspiration. It asks us to value subtle ingenuity, to listen for the wisdom in diverse and often overlooked forms of knowledge, and to remember that the next world-changing idea might not arrive with a fanfare, but with the quiet click of a new kind of connection. If this perspective shift into the unseen corners of history resonated with you, consider subscribing for more journeys that look past the monuments to find the makers. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these quiet innovations amazed you the most? Your insight continues this ancient, essential conversation.